Oh, good morning. My name is Roberto, and today we are in the quarter called Santa Marta, which is on the west side of Venice. This is a very popular quarter, and today there is the market, open market. It's a very interesting, quiet residential place, but it is nice because it's old, very, very old, very popular and old, and there are many churches and interesting buildings to see. This area with these houses with the little staircase were owned by the train company and given for free to the employees of the train companies working at the Venice train station. So it was very popular, very poor area, although very animated, very authentic. These buildings were built in the early 90s. In fact, are very popular and they reflect exactly the style of that area. Tall buildings with high ceilings, but still very popular. As you saw before, today it's a market day in Santa Marta, so you can see all these ladies coming back with their trolleys full of goods and fresh vegetables from San Erasmo and the area of the lagoon. In Venice, all the goods are carried by a little trolley with two wheels. Now there are three wheels to climb the bridges, but still with a trolley to get around. Otherwise the shopping should be too heavy. Now it's a little gym, as you can see, but this little soccer field with grass now, but it was just with dirt, were used by all Venetians to get a tournament of soccer during summertime and spring. My father used to play here, and he was quite good. This is what they say. And the whole city were gathered, was gathered here to see this tournament, and people were seated on the wall when there were no fences, but all surrounded by people screaming and yelling. Very typical Italian, very popular, and still very nice. Unfortunately, these things are not happening any longer, but that was fantastic. We are in front of the San Niccolò dei Mendicoli Church. This is one of the oldest churches in Venice. It was reconstructed in 12th century. They say, based on the bell tower, the shape of the bell tower, they say it belongs to the probably year 1000. Also is recognizable by the shape of the bell tower to be one of the oldest churches in Venice, together with Torcello and St. Mark's Basilica, of course. There was no pavement here, but it was just grass going down where the boats could get closer to the church. There is a typical well beside the church to get the water from, and this is an amazing corner of Venice, and not too many tourists that are coming. The church and the area are certainly far from the city center, but definitely they deserve a visit.
Come lei settembre, sì, 9 o sì, 9 settembre che è regata storica.
And this reddish house is very typical and famous in Venice, as it's called the House of the Seven Chimneys, because there are seven chimneys. Has been restored 10 years ago, and now it's nice. Before it was just abandoned, but then the government decided to restore this historical and popular house. We are in a local area, and this is a typical Venetian canal with the two streets on the side. The streets are called Fondamenta, and the canal is just in the middle, so people can cross a bridge to get on the other side, or take a boat just to cross it. Of course, there are bridges in the smaller canals, but in the bigger canals like the Canal Grande, there are gondolas and few big bridges. Even though we are far from the crowds, there are still some little typical Venetian squares with very old houses. That house probably is dated 14th, 15th century, and there are still bars and restaurants that with table outside to enjoy the fresh air of the evening. This is the back of the Chiesa dei Carmini, and all the churches on the backside, they used to have a cemetery. And in fact, this little square is called Campo Drio il Cimitero, that means square behind the cemetery. It's interesting to know that all the squares are called campo, because campo means field, because there was grass and dirt on the ground only, and the only square is Piazza San Marco, because it was paved with red bricks. But all the other squares in Venice are called campo because of the grass. Walking to Campo San Barnaba and Ponte dei Pugni, more popular places. Someone of you probably will recognize them, which is toward Rialto and St. Mark's area, although we have to cross the Grand Canal. The Chiesa dei Carmini, and approaching this Fondamenta. As you can see, it's very similar to the other one with the two streets on the side and the canal in the middle. Still a small canal with a few boats of local people that go around the lagoon during the weekends with the family to enjoy the sea and the sunlight and the sun. The one that you can see is called Ponte dei Pugni. That means bridge where people, local people from Venice, from Castello and Dorsoduro, this quarter, were coming and fight over the bridge. Of course, there were no railings, and during the fight, who was winning was the quarter, a sort of Palio di Siena, but smaller, with only two quarters involved. There were Castello and Dorsoduro. Now we can climb the bridge a bit and we can see the sign, the footprint of the people, just to remember the name of this bridge. And of course the losing one was falling into the water. Full view of our Venice with the classical gondolier, with a gondolier stand waiting for clients. And farther down, just before the bridge, there is the fruit barge, which in Venice there are only few, one here and one in Via Garibaldi, Castello, maybe one in Cannaregio, but for what I know there are only two barges. And the thing is that in order not to get the vegetable and fruit stolen, people working on those barges used to live or sleep at least in the barge. So there is an anecdote that says that in summertime people were trying to steal watermelons, and they got the head of the man sleeping on the barge, and they were saying, oh, this watermelon doesn't come out, because of course it was the head of the man. We are still in the Dorsoduro area, in a typical fresh calle, getting to a very nice corner of a canal, going to San Trovaso, where the gondola yard is, and it's where we're going to, so I can explain you something about that as well. You see, this is a very nice canal because it makes a smooth corner, and because there are several inlets in Venice and connected by one. The islands are 118 and the bridges are 420. So even a small canal like this has one or two bridges connected one side to the other. Right in front of us there used to be a convent, still is a convent of Suore Canossiane, but many rooms probably are converted into hotel rooms with a different style, of course, most very simple, but still hotel. Ciao.
Vai darsena a Dio Grande e a un
The gondolier was telling a story about yesterday. He was out in the lagoon with the family, and he went to an island that was closed and went to a bar that was closed, and he was a sort of complaining because of the virus. Many restaurants and bars are still closed or limited, with a limited number of people. And a few words about the local boats. This is called San Pierotta from San Pietro in Volta. It's a typical fishing boat with a flat bottom and wider on the side to get all the nests and make it easy to row and also to fish. In the front they were putting fishing nets, and they were just rowing behind. In front of it there is that small and lower boat is called Mascaretta, and it's another typical rowing boat. There is no motorboat, as you can see, no space for motorboat, and there are the two oars there chained and to go around Venice, the city center, along the Grand Canal and a smaller canal like this. It is amazing to go with that kind of boat along the canals around Venice with silence, maybe some noise from the houses or chatting of people, like probably you can hear from the other guy talking on the side. And it is really fantastic. And this time when there are no many tourists is ideal, because the city is not empty, but with less people. So it's quieter, the water is flat and reflecting the houses, as you can see in this canal. This is a reflect of a house on the canal. And it is just amazing. And sometimes there are fishing on the bottom, so you can see fish on the wall of the house in front of it. We absolutely organized these kind of tours with gondoliers, with rowing boats or motorboats, rowing boats inside Venice and motorboats around the lagoon. And it is really an experience that someone cannot miss when it is visiting in Venice. At least a few hours, half a day, but definitely he has to spend some time out in a boat, because you have a different perspective of everything. It's not like walking along streets or calles, but just different, with buildings raising just from the canal, and with windows on the canal and flowers. San Trovaso, and on the right hand side, just behind these buildings, there is Zattere with the Giudecca Canal, and on Giudecca is where the Hilton is located. And see, all these poles on the streets are just to dock the boat. Mostly of them are private, with a small step to get on and off the boat. But sometimes, you can stay there for maybe a few minutes, 1 hour, without getting a fine. This is the church of San Trovaso, the main entrance. As you can see, there is a little staircase to get the gondolas arriving right in front of it. And on the side there is grass and with a well, because as I said before, there were campos with grass. So this is still as it used to be before. I believe at the beginning in the history there were no wall on the side of the canal, but just grass going down into the water, but still a little staircase. The staircase probably, I would say, is dated 15th century, while before there was just ground getting into the water. And this is the most known gondola yard, the San Trovaso gondola yard. And you can see they're still restoring, and they take advantage of this moment of quietness to restore gondolas. The building is unusual, as all made of wood, This is because these people working on the courtyard were coming from the mountains, and they just rebuilt a typical mountain house covered of wood, just because that was their style, and they want to keep that style also in Venice. So the owner now, which is the guy with the blue shirt that was just working here, kept the same style of the old courtyard, and this is how really it really was hundreds of years ago. Everything is still done by hand. No machineries, but everything is done by hand. The wood of the gondolas are curved by hand and fire, and then the boat is painted black, also by hand. Black is because the Repubblica Serenissima in 16th century decided to have all the gondolas painted in black, because the noble people were getting different colors of their own gondolas to be distinguished from the others. So we had red, yellow, green, blue, any kind of color that was not good for the government from the Repubblica. So they made a special law to have all the gondolas painted in black. Now we're crossing the Academia Bridge. This is the first bridge we meet in the Grand Canal. And as you can see, it is a wooden bridge that was definitely bridge, but then, as it was very practical for people to cross the canal at this point, they decided to maintain the bridge, and it was just restored a few years ago. Here is a typical classic view of the Basilica of La Salute, the Peggy Guggenheim collection, which is the lower building, white low building on the right in front of us. As you can see, the Grand Canal is not very crowded, only a few water taxis with tourists, and this is the way Venice should share its beauty with the guests and visitors coming to Venice. We are in Campo Santo Stefano, and this is an historical bar with a nice table outside, and people are getting delicious ice creams and coffee and cappuccino. And there are also, I recognize some locals here, so this is the place where people should come. This is Gelateria da Paolin. A friend of mine is making the ice cream, and he's a real expert in doing so. And this is the place. This is the most in place in Venice for people. Santo Stefano is a selected area where rich people usually gather, as we are just behind the Palazzo Grassi and near the quartiere of Dorso Duro, and this is the place. I should come here just for an ice cream or a cup of coffee. The last thing I want to share with you is the beautiful Scala del Bovolo, which is this. Thank you, and see you next time.